Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, host of the Riderflex podcast and founder and CEO of our day job recruiting firm, Riderflex. We hope you enjoy this episode. And as a reminder, please subscribe to the podcast for updates and news. Finally, if you haven't already, check out the series of books we've published on hiring, interviewing, and overall career advice titled The Riderflex Guide, available on Amazon. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Most homeowners don't have the time or expertise to properly take care of their home, which causes costly issues to arise. That's where Kira Home Maintenance comes in. We're a full-service, routine maintenance company that was developed by a certified home inspector. Each quarter, we service our clients' homes following manufacturer's recommendations to properly maintain all the necessary appliances. We provide the materials and expertise to prolong the life of your property, creating a healthy and efficient environment for your family. From top to bottom, we'll maintain and service your home. To get started, we have a property inspection to determine what needs to be maintained, and a maintenance plan is created based on your preferences. From refrigerator coils to filters, vents, and drains, we do it all, and we do it well. Contact us today for your free routine maintenance inspection, and never worry about your maintenance again.
Jeanne Yohn on the Riderflex podcast. Hello, Jeanne. How you doing?
Hello, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I want to apologize to the audience. I'm in my mobile office here as we travel for the holidays, so don't have my normal background, but the lighting's okay. The camera's not quite as good, but it's I notice it's shining on my bald head, but I guess that's all right as long as people can see through the glare.
Absolutely.
I like your background. That looks good. Now, is that real or no?
Nope, it's not real.
Okay.
Nope, it's not real. It's actually definitely a much better atmosphere than you'd actually have to look at.
And did you pick that? Is that one of the backgrounds in Zoom, or did you picked it on your own? You found it, or what is that?
No, it's actually a Canva background that I just modified.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
It's good. If you can kind of have something unique, at least, right? Something that not everybody else has. That's kind of cool.
It is. It's fun. Definitely.
How's Minnesota? Do you have a bunch of snow on the ground yet, or what's the status?
We did get a little snow, but it didn't stay, and it's just cold. It's just in the teens, so it's pretty standard for this time of year.
Pretty standard.
How about you guys?
Well, we're in Missouri seeing family right now, so there's no snow here. However, I checked the cameras at home this morning in Colorado, and yes, they do have snow there. It looks like 4 or 5 inches at our house, so nothing major, but like you said, kind of standard this time of year.
Yeah, absolutely. No question.
We were nice enough for my neighbors to call and ask me if they wanted to, we wanted them to shovel and throw the UPS packages in the bin, and I said yes, please.
Well, that's that. So you guys, you get the snow and it goes away. Ours usually sticks.
Yes,
that's the problem that we have. Doesn't go away.
Yes. At least down, in the foothills and where I live, it goes away. Now up in the mountains, of course, it stays the whole year. But we live down the hill,
yeah.
so it goes away. Once you get it, it's there, huh? Pretty much.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, typically this is pretty typical of this time of year where it goes away. But once it starts hitting December, it's all over.
Yeah. Do you have a gigantic snowblower, one of those big, huge ones?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Do you have like an ATV with like a blade on the front, or like a truck, or what's?
No, but my husband's bought a commercial one. It's big. It's huge.
Very good. Where are you from originally, Jeanne? Tell the audience a little bit about yourself personally, if you don't mind.
Sure. I'm a native Minnesotan. Can you hear?
Now I do. You were hiding it.
Yeah, I don't hide it often. You'll hear it. You'll definitely hear it. But yeah, I was born and raised in Minnesota, and so a little bit about me is I actually am a wife and mom to my husband and I raised 2 boys while I was climbing the corporate ladder.
Ooh.
And I worked in pharmaceutical sales, and it's actually a very male-dominated industry
Mm.
in the sales side of it. In the sales side, very male-dominated at
Okay.
the leadership level. I was the first and only vice president in the 102-year history of the company that I left
Wow.
out of
Really?
corporate. So,
How about that?
yes. Yeah, female vice president in sales. So it just doesn't happen that often.
Really?
So I did that at the same time we were raising a family, and I really enjoy working with women leaders. And so that's where I've focused my time since I left corporate America, is I focused on helping women leaders, and I work with businesses that want more women leadership and actually help them overcome some of their destructive thought patterns that women
Mm.
often have that are preventing them from getting ahead and actually
Mm.
causing the most problems that they're
Mm.
having with
Mm.
being burned out and stressed, and most of all, not creating the kind of harmony between work, career, and their home life. So
Was there something in your personal life that kind of drove you in that direction, or was that things
yeah.
that happened professionally? What pushed you towards that?
Well, it's interesting because my inspiration wasn't really, at least initially, about me. I
Okay.
watched as really powerful, successful women started to crumble during the pandemic and remote learning and daycare issues. And I really wanted to help women understand what they can do to continue to maintain a career and also their home life and
Mm.
create some sense of harmony between the two. But the big thing that happened was when I had a self-discovery. And my husband and I raised two boys together, but we've lost one of them.
I
So,
see. I see.
yeah,
Just one. Okay. I see. One has passed. All right.
it was in the pandemic. It was
Okay.
in July of 2020.
Mm.
And we got a knock on our door, and a sheriff from the county came and told us that our son had taken his own life.
Mm.
That happens to too many parents, especially of young men.
Wow.
And it was clearly devastating. He was actually my stepson, but he was my boy since he was 5 years old.
Okay.
And think about the pandemic at that time, right, Steve? There was nothing open. There were no therapists to go to. There were
Mm.
no
Mm.
groups meeting, not even online at that point in time. We were on our own to try to get through the worst thing that could have happened to a parent.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You
Yeah.
can't even, like, your friends and family can't even really at that point, right? Not a lot of people coming over to your house to
No.
give you comfort, because we were kind of in lockdown right around
We
then,
were
weren't we?
totally in lockdown and
Yes.
nothing was available to us. Churches
Mm.
weren't even meeting.
Mm.
Nothing was available to us.
Wow.
And so I was sent on a spiritual journey of my life, to be honest with you. It was
Mm.
one of those things where I just got, my hands on books. I watched YouTube, I listened to podcasts, all
Mm.
kinds of things that you could do to
Mm.
try to get through this horrific time.
Mm.
And it was so interesting, Steve, because what came to me was not what I expected in this process. But I had realized that I had been driven by fear my whole life. It was a revelation that came to me in this spiritual journey
Mm.
that was unrelated to this situation with my son. But it really was, I realized how much fear-based decisions I have made. Come to find out, that's typical for women.
Mm.
Come to find out,
Mm.
fear-based decisions is typical.
Fear-based around your career, losing your job, not having enough money, not getting promoted, not doing well. What kind of fears?
Yes, 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 and yes. Having said that, there's more. There's largely fear of judgment.
Mm.
It is largely fear of judgment. It's actually the core of what happens with mom guilt.
I see. Okay.
Mom guilt is based on the fact that when you're at home, you think you're not doing enough for work. When you're at work, you're not doing enough for your kids. We're never doing enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so we make decisions out of fear of this judgment that are not good for us or even the people around us, whether it's an employer or whether it's you in your family and in your home life.
Mm. And were you always hard on yourself before this happened with your son, about the fact that you worked and traveled all the time? Were you already beating yourself up about that on a regular basis before this tragedy? I'm just guessing so.
Absolutely. It was the tragedy that really helped me understand I was making these decisions out of fear. I had a fear, as does a lot of women. This is one of our destructive thought patterns that we have, that if we don't keep trying to prove ourselves at work, prove ourselves and be worthy of the roles that we have, which means we have to take on more, do more, that we burn out. If we don't do that, we will lose our job. They won't think we're valuable. All of the things that you just said.
I see. Interesting. Were you the breadwinner? Were you or what I mean by that is, was your husband stay-at-home dad, or did he work too? What was the relationship?
No, he actually full-time. He was in grocery management.
I see.
So he was full-time in that capacity. So it was a joint effort. One thing I will say, I got lucky because I got with the lucky stick. I often say my husband did most of our cooking. He likes to cook. He did most of the cooking. He did almost all the grocery shopping. And why someone likes to grocery shop, but he does. So he did all of that. So I had some ways that actually helped. His hours that he worked was different than mine. So he had time to get home. I had a meal on the table when I got home at night.
Oh,
That doesn't
nice.
happen for most women. That does not happen for most women. So when I say that it's typical thinking, it's typical, but in maybe different ways for some women.
Mm-hmm. You've used the word spiritual a couple of times. I want to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Tell me, do you tie that to religion in some way? Do you have faith? Are you faith-based in a certain religion? I want to know more there.
I am. I'm a faith-based Christian. That's how I identify myself.
Okay. All right. All right. And were you that way before you had the spiritual revelation, or more so after?
Oh no, I was definitely more. I have been a faith-based Christian for my entire life. So yeah, no, absolutely. So
Okay.
it wasn't that. And I did turn to my faith. But in the process of that, this revelation came to me. And I really felt strongly that revelation about fear-based decisions was important.
I got you. And how do you go about making the decisions for career and family by removing the fear word? How do you do that? I'm guessing that's your practice in general. So I don't want you to give away all the free answers here, but how do you do that?
I'm very happy to enlighten people, because this is important for your audience. This is important for work. This is important for businesses, because businesses understand that they have to start looking to women more frequently. Almost half of their workforce now are women. Over half now of college graduates are women. Our future is based on getting more women into executive leadership. It's more profitable. So we know that those are the challenge. Now I've lost track of your question again, so I apologize. Your initial question was, how do I use that faith-based or that fear-based decision-making? How do I use that?
How do you get away from making decisions based on fear?
Okay.
How do you stop doing that? Because a lot of the decisions you're talking about, worried about doing good at work, whether or not you should take the promotion, whether or not you should travel, am I spending enough time with my kids? These are all things you do have to think about as a human being, right? You can't remove those thoughts, and you still have to make those decisions. How do you make them not fear-based?
Right. So that is one of the steps that I take women through, because I've defined and uncovered 3 common limiting beliefs, if you will, but really they're just destructive thinking patterns based on socialization as a child. Men have them as well, but women just have different ones. And one of them is this fear-based issue, the fact that they have to uncover what they're fearing. The problem is we're not aware of it. So that's step number 1 that I work with women on. They have to become aware when fear is actually causing them to make the decisions that they're making. Fear of judgment, again, is largely it. And the bottom line is that when we do finally uncover that, we have to learn how to process those emotions that come from fear better than we do. Women are notoriously bad at processing our emotions before they then create a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the types of things that I work with women on. There's a
Mm-hmm.
couple more that are actually really interesting that I think your audience and you might find interesting as well, Steve. And the other two are that we tend to want to own everything. So one of the things I help women do is understand that they can't own everything. We spread ourselves way too thin, and we actually spread ourselves so thin over things that don't take our skill set.
Okay.
And so we're wasting time, and we're creating way more work for ourselves than we need to do. An example of that was when it was a home life situation, but I know that women in your audience can appreciate this. When I got married, I had my stepson, and first Christmas, I went out and bought all the Christmas presents for him, for my husband's family, the ones that I was already doing. And I just thought I was supposed to. Find out, my husband told me a couple of years later, he didn't have any problem going out and doing the Christmas shopping for his family, his son. He didn't have any problem with that. And I said, well, do you want to do it? And he said, no, I'm good. You can keep doing it. And I thought, I just bought myself a job I didn't need to. If I just thought for a second, I wouldn't be less than if I didn't do this, because every woman I knew was doing this.
I see.
Why did I fear that he would think I would be less than if I didn't?
I like that example. You mentioned something a second ago. You said part of your training, I guess is the word, part of your training is to help women be able to not react from emotions so quickly, right? I think is how you said it. Something, not let emotions cause a quick reaction.
Right. So that's a really good thing to talk about. So
let's talk about that. Let's dive in on that one.
Yeah. So here's what happens. And this is true of all human beings, right? We have a set of belief systems that are installed during socialization largely, right?
Okay.
And that belief system creates our thinking. And when we have a thought, that creates an emotion. And when we have that emotion, that creates action.
Mm-hmm. I see.
So when women have this thought that they are going to be judged, that there's something, or they have a fear that things are going to turn out not like they want. Okay, right? Sometimes we catastrophize things, that we think that things are going to become a catastrophe. So if they think that's going to happen, then what they want, then they hit this emotion point about fear is kicking in. I'm going to have to do something to prevent that, or I'm going to have to do something to cause something different to happen. And we're not processing that emotion of fear.
I see.
So what we want to do is help women, first of all, be aware that fear is happening, and then process it.
Okay.
And that's something else that I teach women how to do, is that there's a method to processing. And the more we practice that method, the more aware we become, the more our reactions, our behaviors, and our decisions become impacted positively.
So many of these things you're talking about, I feel like men deal with too. Like the whole time you're telling me about all these things, I'm like, well, okay, this sounds great, but I'm trying to think of one thing you've mentioned that don't also affect men in some way.
Exactly. The difference is, Steve, that men have those same destructive thought patterns. I shouldn't say it that way. They have this destructive thought pattern that is ingrained in their socialization.
Okay.
The difference is that they are different. They are different thought patterns.
How are they different? Because I'm trying, everything you've said so far, I'm just like, okay, well, that all affects me. I have fears. I have fear-based decisions. I react on emotions. I do all those things.
Okay. And that's probably true. So this is not universal, right? This is not saying all men behave this way and all women behave this way, because that's not true.
Okay.
But I will say this, I'll give you a good example. When we're socialized as children, it's really largely, kids are just little energy vampires, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You just want your energy.
Yeah.
And they'll take good or bad. And that actually drives their behaviors going forward in the future. Now think about a little girl who's 3 years old, 4 years old, and a little boy who's 3 or 4 years old.
Okay.
Generally speaking, your little boy's got more energy, right? You put them both down to do a coloring, that little girl will sit there for 15, 20 minutes, maybe even longer if she likes it. The little boy will maybe sit there for 3 minutes, then he's up running around.
Okay.
So that is now reinforcing attention to him. Little Jacob is running around, so he gets mom saying, Jacob, sit back down. Mom, do this. Mom says, do this, Jacob. Do that, Jacob. Don't do this. Don't do that. He is being rewarded with energy for going outside boundaries, for taking chances,
Okay.
doing something different than he was instructed to do. And little girls are being rewarded. That little girl who's coloring gets mom's attention, saying, what a good job you're doing. She's getting attention for following the rules.
Okay.
Men are more likely to push past them.
And do you think that causes men to take more risks with their careers and things later? Is that how that ties in?
Correct.
I see. Okay. Very
So
good.
they're just different. They're just different. Men, little boys are socialized to take more risks. They're socialized to push past boundaries. They're socialized to compete. And that's actually a destructive part of that process. That can be destructive thinking on the part of a man. That competition they say our strengths carried to excess are our weaknesses. And that's what happens. When
So are you saying little boys shouldn't be taught to compete? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Okay.
I'm saying that both kids should be taught to compete.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So some of these things in some of these opportunities that you see in women that you can help, you're saying a lot of them come from the way they're raised, the way they're
Right.
I see.
But it's nothing nefarious. So honestly, Steve, I really want to make sure this is not about pitting men against women at all.
Okay.
Right. This is simply recognizing that women have these common thought processes from childhood based on the fact that we were socialized the way and given the energy that we did based on those things. It's not.
Should they be socialized differently though, moving forward? Is that what you're saying?
No.
No.
I'm not saying. I'm not saying. And the reason being is that all we're doing is rewarding behavior that we see that's good, and even rewarding behavior that's not good is the energy they're looking for reinforcement. So that can be what happens to little girls. Little girls are often raised to be good little girls, follow the rules, and that doesn't help them in the workplace. It doesn't even help them when they're trying to manage a career and a home life. It's interesting. You had mentioned, our family dynamics. I don't know if you are aware of this, but now the majority of women actually out-earn their spouses now. The majority of women out-earn their spouses.
I did not know that stat. No, didn't know that.
And despite that, they are still responsible for most of the household chores and the childcare. It doesn't change their behavior.
And what are the guys doing? Playing golf, going hunting, fishing?
No, it's not that they're doing nothing. They're not doing nothing, obviously. But I'm just saying that this particular part of it, women feel compelled to take that on because that's what a good girl does.
I see.
That's what a good girl does. And
Mm.
so she takes, and like I bought the Christmas shopping, we take on, that's another part of this responsibility thing, that we take on ownership for so much that we don't need to take on. But you know what's interesting, Steve? There is one more, and actually it plays into all of this because these are very much intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
But the last one is that women don't really fully understand their value. And here's what the problem is women actually think their value is tied to productivity. In other words, how much effort, how much work they put in, which is why they continue to try to prove themselves. They have to prove their value, and they do that by continually taking more on.
And you don't think men do that? Every time you're mentioning something specific like that, I'm thinking, well, don't guys do that too? You don't think so?
So let me ask you that. So what would explain then why women are taking on most of the household jobs and chores and childcare? And it's not because men can't, and it's not because they won't. It's because women have done this to themselves and said they have to, or they're not going to be seen as a good wife, a good mother, those kinds of things. And it doesn't mean that men don't have some of those things. It doesn't mean that at all. But let me give you a good example of the value piece, because I think that one's really interesting. So when I say women don't understand their value, they don't understand how much they mean. If you ask especially a working mom, if you ask them what their value is, they tend to start with the list of things they do. When you ask a man that, you may get a different result. For example, you may get ones that they understand their experience, their talents, their skills, what they contribute. They understand their accomplishments, and women don't. I have looked at probably easily thousands of resumes in my career, thousands.
Right.
And women do not put their value in there. They put their tasks on a resume. Men are more likely to say, I did this. I accomplished this. And that's the difference between men and women.
Interesting.
Because they don't. I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I haven't noticed that. Riderflex is a recruiting firm. That's our day job. That's what we do for a living beyond the podcast. So I have never had a recruiter mention that distinction for me in resumes on women versus men, but I will definitely bring that up to the group, and I will start looking for that pattern more myself, because we have not discussed that pattern as a firm between male and female resumes, but I will definitely look for that.
Well, and I think, Steve, that's a really good point, because when you're looking at an executive woman, the likelihood is pretty high she's had somebody to help her with it.
I see.
So I think that's where you're probably not going to see it as strongly, but on the average, I see a significant difference between how they sell themselves, because they fully understand their value. I'll give you another example. This is a workplace example of value. So I don't know if you've ever seen this, but I certainly have. I see that often when there's a organization and they're asking for some volunteer help, not like volunteer charity work, but volunteer for a project or a program or extra work that they have to do, that often women raise their hand.
Okay.
And I don't see men raising their hand quite as often. So, and it was just an observation. So I talked to a fellow executive, a man that I worked with, and I asked him, I said, why don't you volunteer more often? It was more often the women leaders that were doing that. And he said, well, I would if no one else would. And here's the difference in terms of the thinking. I have no doubt this was a very valuable man, very valuable in terms of the organization. He understood that his value wasn't volunteering for more work to be done. He understood his value was working hard on what his core strengths were and doing it super well. The mindset of women, when I talk to them about why they frequently volunteer, and it was my own thought too. They thought they wouldn't be seen as leaders. They thought they wouldn't be seen as a leader. And I had that very thought in my head that I had to demonstrate I was a leader. I was a leader, Steve. I was an executive at the organization. I was already a leader. He understood that. I did not.
Interesting. Okay. Very good. Okay, thank you. Well, these insights are interesting to hear. Some of them I have not heard before, so I appreciate you enlightening me on some of your thoughts and your strategy. I want to ask real quick before we go further into your practice, your business. And by the way, how do you refer to it? Do you refer to it as coaching, consulting, your practice, how do you refer to it when you're
It's a great question. It's a great question. I'm actually more of a consultant.
Okay.
I'm a consultant, I'm a speaker, I'm a trainer.
Okay.
So I work largely with organizations that want to help their women succeed. So it's a training program as well.
Okay. Well, I want to come back to that. Let's come back to that. But I want to ask you a couple of things real quick personally. Now, you said, okay, when you married your husband, you had one child and he had one child, or he had a child and then you had one together?
No, so he had a child and then we had one together.
I see. And were either one of you married before? Just curious.
Yes, my husband was married before,
but not yourself.
No.
I see. Okay.
And I got married later in life.
I
So,
see. Oh, see. How old were you when you got married?
so I was in my late 30s.
Okay. Did you
Yeah.
almost get married before? Anything in there? Anything close?
Nope. Nope. I managed to escape. And actually I had already kind of started up that ladder, climbing the ladder. So my husband knew what he got when he got me, right? He knew I was interested in continuing to succeed.
You were
And
already you were already traveling pretty heavily. Were you traveling heavy when you guys met?
so no, actually at that point in time, I was working in a different organization. I didn't do a whole lot of traveling.
Okay.
So he got
Okay.
the travel part of it after the fact.
He did. Well,
He did.
okay. Yeah, well, good for him. How long have you guys been married now?
We've been married well, it's 27 years.
Wow, good for you. Okay, very good. Any grandchildren?
No, unfortunately, with the loss of our older son, we lost that opportunity. Our younger son is actually a student right now, so he's nowhere close.
Nowhere. I see. Student, as in college.
Well, he's actually taking college courses. He's changed directions in his career, so he's gone back to school.
A young person changing directions. That's so weird.
I know, it is. It is.
That,
Yep.
yeah, well, we have 4 grown children, and they change directions so much I can't even keep up. I don't even know. You know what they're doing. Sometimes I'm just like, whatever. Just come see me. We'll love on you. I don't know what your plan is, but I can't. I don't know.
Yep. That's all you can do. They're grown. They can make up their own minds, right?
They can, unfortunately. I try to give them
Yep.
advice, but they rarely listen. It's like I've just, do what you can do.
Right.
You give them advice, and these days, based on their age, I can't give them too much, or I start to annoy them, and then they won't come around. So I try
Yeah,
to,
exactly. Exactly.
I
There's a
try to,
limit. There's a
yeah,
limit.
there's a limit where I'm just like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Not, in my head, of course, I'm thinking, I'm not sure why you're doing that. That makes no sense, but
Yeah.
you're a grown person. So,
That's
I want to ask you, I forgot to ask you in the beginning real quick. So I'm going backwards for a second. Your parents, what did your folks do?
so my mom was a stay-at-home mom. We had 7 kids in the family. So she stayed home with the kids, and my dad worked actually for the Social Security Administration
Huh?
and the VA for a period of time.
Do you think any of your thoughts and strategy and insights stem from the way you were raised in your mom, because your mom was a stay-at-home mom with 7 kids?
Oh my gosh, Steve, that's a great question. I'm going to tell you the funny story about this. So I was the kind of in the middle of the 7 kids,
Okay.
and I was at home one evening. My dad was sitting on his chair watching TV, and it was a Saturday evening, and it was like 11 o'clock on a Saturday night.
Okay.
And my mom was coming upstairs with her load of laundry
Okay.
at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night
Hmm.
and putting things away. And I looked at her and I looked at my dad and I said, I want his job. His job looked so much easier. She's doing laundry at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night and he's sitting in front of the TV.
Uh-huh.
And so I do think that actually kind of, did hit me that I want to be a success as well. I want to be able to work. And I watched my dad work hard, and he was a smart man, and I really valued him. He was a man of great integrity. So I in many ways I modeled myself after my dad. So it wasn't, and my older sister had 4 kids like you. She wanted nothing more than becoming a stay-at-home mom. So those
Did she?
some
Did she?
she did. She
And
actually both
does
my sisters
and does
became
she?
stay-at-home
Okay.
moms.
And did they like it?
Oh yeah, they absolutely did. And it wasn't because I didn't love kids and I didn't want kids. I did. Before I got married, I actually was thinking about adopting a child on my own. But I really wanted to also, I just had a high drive and a high need to succeed in what I was doing.
But some of the things you've talked about, though, I feel like had to have been influenced by the fact that you saw your mom doing more things around the house than your dad, because you've mentioned stuff like that a few times.
Mhm.
So that obviously had an effect on you.
And that's a good question. I'll be honest with you. I haven't even thought about it that way. It's not because I'm a lazy person. I do a lot of things around our home too. It's not that, but I do think it was what I preferred. It's what I wanted to do. I didn't have a preference for
Okay,
what my older sister did and my mom did.
gotcha. Okay, very good. But you think your dad could have done more around the house when you were growing up?
Yeah.
He
But
could have done.
the good news is, Steve, that's changing. I mean, it really is in terms of, I mean, here's a great stat that I just ran across recently,
Okay.
and how men are participating in home and family more than they ever have before. In the 1980s, the number of men that changed a diaper was 28%.
Is that increase in their help around the house probably in relation to the fact that more women are also working?
Absolutely. There's no
Oh,
question about that. But
okay.
it's also, I think, I think just generationally, I think things have changed.
Okay.
Like example, the number of men who changed a diaper was 20% in the 1980s. Do you know where it is now?
Uh, the number of men that change diapers that have kids, I'm going to guess 90.
It's close. It's about 85%.
Yeah, I would think
That's a
so.
huge change. And I'm saying
I can't think of a dad that doesn't change. I don't know a
it's
dad that doesn't change diapers.
no, you're probably the only dads that do it that have
I know.
stay-at-home,
I know a
you know.
grandpa that doesn't change diapers. That's me.
Well, you already did your choice.
Exactly.
You already did it.
Uh,
But I'm just I'm trying to say that I think things are changing in the right direction. But if women don't change their thinking and still hold on to these things, when men actually do want to help, men do want to do these things, or they can do these things,
mm,
women have to stop holding on to them all because they
okay.
fear they'll be judged.
Gotcha. Okay. Were you always a good kid in high school and college? Straight
Oh yeah.
A's? Were you
Oh
straight?
yeah.
Did you ever get into any? Did you ever get in trouble or anything? Did you ever venture out, party a little bit?
Certainly did my own share of partying, but not too far. I was definitely one of the good girls. My brothers were different story. I had four brothers, and they were a different story.
Okay.
Different story. They had their chances for a lot of being hoodlums and stuff. So yeah.
Okay, very good. So you enjoyed college a little bit, but you didn't get too crazy. That's what I'm hearing.
No, I put myself through college. I worked almost full time. I put myself through college. So honestly, I didn't really, college was, yeah, it wasn't the college that maybe certainly my younger son has enjoyed. He didn't, I didn't get the same opportunity.
When you were selling for the pharmaceutical company, now there's been all these movies and TV shows lately about the Sackler family and the pharmaceutical sales and uh the opioid crisis and everything. So now every single time I talk to somebody that was in the pharmaceutical sales, I'm just automatically bucketing them into that circle.
Mm-hmm.
Were you in that world at all? Was that happening when you were there? Did you see any of
Yeah.
that? Just curious.
Oh yeah. No. It's for real. It's for real. Absolutely. Having said that, I worked with an organization that had two prongs to their business. One was a branded side, which is the side that I played on, but also generic side. So they were a very different kind of blended company.
Okay.
And they're really at best a mid-sized pharma company. They're not big pharma.
I see.
But we played against big pharma
Okay.
and all of the things that means.
Were you selling Oxycontin, Jeanne? That's what I want to
I
know.
did not sell OxyContin, thank goodness. I
Uh,
did not.
okay. Okay. I saw, my wife and I have watched a few of those documentaries. And I'm like, oh man, that's, you never know how much of that stuff's true. I don't know. I'm guessing some of it's true. I'm sure some of it's for entertainment too, but,
Yeah. Yeah,
you
it's probably a good chunk of it is unfortunately based in truth. We could do a whole podcast on pharma and all of that, but
you'll have to come back to the show for that one.
definitely.
The last, one of the last things I'll say on that topic is, I want to believe, like, I want to believe that there wasn't evil scientists purposely trying to create a drug just to get people addicted. Like, I want to believe like they were trying to create a pill to solve pain.
Mhm.
They're trying to do good when they created the pill,
Yeah.
but then the salespeople and the business people took over and started pushing something that they knew probably wasn't good for addiction, and it kept going and it got out of hand. I guess my point is, I don't think foundationally it was created from evil in the beginning. Does that make sense?
It does, and I would agree with you. I
Yeah.
believe that they are doing this to genuinely do that. I think that to your point, they saw the profitability of it and they chose a path that was
Yep.
unscrupulous.
Yeah. 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 And by the way, wouldn't it be great if somebody could create a pill that solved that stopped pain, that wasn't addictive? That would be
Yeah,
the best creation ever.
absolutely. Exactly. Yeah.
That would be awesome. Anyway, okay. Well, because I just wanted to touch a little bit on, I just really believe that who you become as a person, especially once you get into your 50s, and we all know that you're 48. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
once you get into your 50s, so many things about you are influenced by your family, how you were raised, your mom and dad, whether or not you've been divorced, whether or not you've had life tragedies like your son, what you've done for a living. And so where you're at now and what you're doing now to help coach women all came from all of those experiences, right? A little bit of everything in there probably. And that's why I want the audience to just kind of know some of your past, right? And who you are as a person, and kind of how what built you into the consultant you are now.
Correct. No, I 100% agree that all of my experiences is what I'm bringing to this at
No
this
doubt.
point.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And so back to your business now. You don't ever want to go back to the corporate world? Do you want to just you're going to ride out this consulting thing until you decide to retire? What's the plan?
Exactly. That's exactly the plan. It's when I left corporate America, I really felt compelled to find something new. I really wanted
Okay.
to go down a different path, and I experimented with a few different things, but really what I found is when I left corporate America, the biggest thing I found that I really missed about that role was helping people succeed, helping people grow in their careers, helping people advance in their
Yeah.
business.
Mm-hmm.
And I really loved doing that, and I had a success doing that. Having said that, I was frustrated about the fact that women don't do it well. They often, like you've heard the stat. It's out
Well,
there. It's that
they must be doing it pretty well, because you said on average they make more than the men these days.
well, they're doing, but they're the majority, right? So they're now less than half. They're not, and they're no longer less than half. They're half the households. Does that make
I
sense?
thought earlier you said that women on average are earning more income than men.
No, I'm sorry. I apologize. So here's what the stat is. The stat
Okay.
is that the households with a man and a woman,
Uh-huh.
right,
Uh-huh.
now have the majority of those households, women out earn the men. So it's about 51, 52% of households, the women out earn the men.
Okay, well then back to my original statement, women must be doing pretty good.
They are doing better. There's no question about it. They are
What do you want
doing
them to do? What do you want them to do? Double what the men are making? What's good enough for you? You just said they're making more. I'm just giving you a hard time. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Not a problem.
Okay, I want to go to the audience here and just make sure they know. Jeanne Yohn Coaching.com. JeanneYohnCoaching.com. And there's also a LinkedIn and Facebook tab on there. Jeanne, how do you propose I see there's a contact information page on here. Is that the best thing to do?
Sure, they can absolutely hit the contact page. They can certainly go into LinkedIn and contact me and link in there. They can absolutely go to my website, and I can also send another link that will just bounce them right to some information that I think will be more applicable for your audience, probably the most applicable part of it.
And you're on LinkedIn. You don't mind if they send you a LinkedIn connection?
Not at all. Not at all. That would be great.
And if you look up Jeanne Yohn on LinkedIn, in case there's a bunch of them, she is in the greater Minneapolis, St. Paul area.
I am.
So that's how you can find her these days. I don't know how many Jeanne Yohns there are out there. I'm guessing there's more than one. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, there is actually at least one.
Is
There is actually. She's linked in with me.
Oh, is that right? That's
Yeah.
pretty funny.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. And what is your primary focus right now? I know that you do public speaking, you do coaching, training. What's your primary focus? Where's the bulk of your business? I guess that's a two-part question.
Sure. No, the bulk of my opportunities right now are really starting with speaking engagements with businesses.
Okay.
So coming in and speaking to the very things that we've just talked about today to their women leaders or their emerging women leaders.
Okay.
So that we can help them identify what these destructive thought processes are and how we can help them come around that. From there, organizations can determine whether or not they want to implement any type of training program, which I do also provide. So they often will take a small group of their women leaders and put them through a program that will allow them all the support and accountability that they need to make significant changes in these thought processes.
Okay. Okay, very good. Now, what happens if if a company hires you and they send out a big memo that says you're there, you're going to do this engagement, and the women there are excited and they all sign up, and you go and you do your class or your training session. And then what happens when the men are in the lunchroom and they're like, "Hey man, like what do we get, like a special training thing? Like where's our do we get who's coming to talk to us?" What happens then? I'm just curious.
Sure. You know, it's actually, it hasn't posed a big problem. I do think what's interesting is organizations are actually starting to invest in this type of women leadership programs that are out there. I think the challenge is that they're often very cookie cutter in their approach to leadership.
You're dodging my question. You're dodging my question, Jeanne. What happens? How do the men feel when they where's the special training for the men?
Okay, so I will just try to tell you here what organizations are feeling like. Okay. There's general leadership opportunities that are offered that men participate in all the time. Organizations offer those
that aren't offered to women right now. So you're saying there's leadership opportunities?
No, they're not specific to men.
Okay.
They're not specific to men.
Okay.
But let's just remind you that men don't have a difficulty climbing the ladder. Men are
they don't. Okay. Okay.
Well,
you might get some responses on that comment. We'll see what happens.
Well, no, so I'm gonna back that up with receipts then. Okay.
Okay.
So there's a landmark study that's done annually by McKinsey & Company about women in the workplace. And just this last 2023 findings said that there's a phenomenon now called the broken rung, that women get into entry-level management, but the men climb consistently faster.
And you don't think that stat has anything to do with women voluntarily stepping down because they want to stay at home and have kids? You think it's just
I think you're close.
You think it's just because they're overlooked, huh? You
No.
don't think it has anything to do with their decision to stay at home and have kids and step down?
Nope. I actually agree with you on some level. Okay. In fact, actually quite a lot.
I hate stats like that, by the way. As a male, every time I hear a stat like that, I'm like, you're not taking into consideration that a lot of those women choose to not increase their careers because they want to have a baby and stay at home with them, which is, by the way, I think perfectly fine.
Absolutely is. Okay, so let me clarify then. Yeah. Okay. These are real stats. These are not fake stats, right? These are
but the stats don't include how many women chose not to move up.
I agree. And actually, that's so interesting you should say that, because that is literally the thing that I share with my audiences about this stat. Okay. So this broken rung syndrome that is being called out to say, well, they start to climb the ladder and then there's a broken rung and they don't go any further. What my problem has been, and it's been my experience, Steve, it's been my experience. I have coached women who have families, and I actually did an informal poll on a Facebook group that I had, about 250 women. And I said, why are you not getting ahead at work? The number one choice and I gave them several choices about why they think they're not getting ahead. 85% of them said, if I take a promotion, I will take more time away from my family.
What's wrong with that thought process? What's wrong with them saying, I want to spend more time with my family?
There is nothing wrong with the thought process.
And what's wrong with the choice? What's wrong with the choice?
Okay, so bear with me for just a second.
Okay.
So there's nothing wrong with the thought process and nothing wrong with the choice. if that's the choice they want.
What-
And the problem is that it may not be. They would love to succeed in their career. They would love to move ahead in their career. They see it as an expense. If they do that they will take away more time from their family. And the truth is, Steve, they will, if
Right.
they don't change their thinking.
I
If
think
they
that is a
don't
warm,
change their
I
thinking.
personally think that is a warm and wonderful thought. I think it's fantastic that a mom would say, gosh, I really want to spend more time with my family and my kids. I think that's a wonderful thing. I don't think that's a bad thought.
Okay, it's not a bad thought. Again, if they want that. But Steve, I think you've missed the other part of this. The other
Okay.
part of it is that they often would love to succeed in their career. They would love to advance. They're often doing a lot of work that would put them in a position for that. They voluntarily choose out of fear, not reality, Steve, fear that they will be taking more time away from their family.
And you don't think men make decisions based out of fear that they won't provide for their families? You don't think there's a fear base for men there?
Of course they do. Absolutely.
Which is why they keep working so hard and trying to stay at the job, because they're worried. Their fear is they're not going to be a provider.
No doubt that is.
Okay.
Absolutely there is.
Okay.
I hope you see the difference. The difference isn't really about whether or not a woman has a right to choose that. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if a man had a right to choose that?
Well, what I see moving it up, moving this to 50,000 feet, what I really see is, and you know, I probably should have you back on the show so we can go deeper on this. What I do see a lot these days is a heavy focus on the gender equality for women, with a lot of things that you're talking about. And I don't see that for men, because I think there's a lot of people saying things like, well, men already have this, or men already get that, and they don't have the same fears or the same hurdles or the same troubles. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, they do. Yeah, yeah, they do too. Like the men need help as well in many things. And I don't see a lot of companies hiring a special coach to come in and say, we're going to have a special class to help the men for their fears and challenges. As a matter of fact, if that even happened, there'd probably be a revolt in the building. Everybody'd be like, what do you mean the men are going to get a special class? Oh my God. And I don't see a lot of that. I don't see a lot of balanced focus to help men with their issues. I see a heavy focus to help the mom and the women. And I think that's great. I think that's awesome.
Okay.
It pulls me back to my question to you, which was, where's the special coach coming in just for the men? Are they going to get a special class too, or is this just for women? So, and I don't see a lot of that. That's really.
Oh, I think you're right. I don't know that I see any of it.
I haven't.
I don't either. I think you have to take a look at demand. I mean, is there a demand for it? And until there is a demand for it, I don't know that. And I'm not obviously going to be the person who does that, right? I'm not going to be the one who can do that, because I don't know what your fears are. I don't understand them. I don't live with.
I think that's part of the problem. Men have a habit of not sharing their emotions and their fears. They hold that. They hold that in. And I think they are feeling just as vulnerable in many of the things you've talked about. In fact, I think men feel 95% of every single thing you brought up that you say women are worried about and have fear on. I can't think of anything you mentioned that I don't think about. Okay. And I know most men think about the same things. And so as you're describing your coaching for the women, I'm thinking, well, this is great. I love what Jeanne's doing. Well, why can't this be for everybody? Because every single thing Jeanne is saying affects men too, in my opinion. Because every fear, everything you talked about, all the family stuff. I mean, I have all of those things too.
Sure.
And so my point is, I think it's wonderful what you're doing for women. I'd like to see men helped as well, and given that opportunity. And I don't think we should live in a world where we just assume the men are okay. Because
I would agree with you. I would agree. And I said that earlier. I said that men have their own socialized behaviors and thought processes and belief systems.
Yes.
That are equally as destructive.
which is why they need special coaches coming in to help as well, which I don't see.
Absolutely. Well, and I would agree with you. I mean, there is definitely a lot of things that I think that a coach could help, a trainer could help, especially men in leadership. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
I'm not someone who would be able to fill that, but I will say this: you brought to light something I hadn't thought about before. And I actually often encourage both men and women to attend my presentations. I really do.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. I that's a wonderful idea. I think that would be very beneficial, not only for the men as individuals, but to help with their relationship with their spouse in many cases, probably.
Their spouse and their coworkers. They're working right alongside these same women and their spouse, their mother, their sister, their daughters, understanding at least what some of this is coming from can only the situation.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I think the best part about this is I think this is going to give women and men, I guess. I hadn't even really thought about this, both of them, an understanding that you have a lot more in your control than you think you do.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, wonderful. There you go. I like that.
Yeah.
In fact, I think all of your sessions going forward should say, hey, look, this is a focus on women, but I encourage men to come. I like that.
I do. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because honestly, we can learn from each other. The truth of the matter is women can learn from men. They absolutely
and vice versa.
And vice versa. Absolutely. And so we don't need to become men. We need to become a better version of ourselves by looking at it a little differently. Maybe more like
by the way, I couldn't agree more with that last statement. It's so interesting as we've had this entire conversation. My wife is in the camper, so she can hear all of this. So I can't wait to ask her about it when we hang up.
I'd love to hear her opinion.
Yeah. Yes. What you just said, by the way, that's a great ending. Yeah. I'm a big fan of women being women and men being men. No doubt about it.
Absolutely.
But I'm also a big fan of them understanding each other to the best of their ability and constantly working to understand each other, which is a full-time job.
Absolutely is. It definitely goes both ways, doesn't it?
Right. I know sometimes I'll do something. My wife's probably like, "Oh my God, what in the hell is he doing? God, it makes no sense." But then she'll do stuff too, where and I'll be like, "Oh, okay," and But anyway, I'm just joking around. But okay, let's see. We're out of time, but I just want to make sure everybody knows it's Jeanne Yohn, JeanneYohnCoaching.com. Jeanne Yohn, YOHN, JeanneYohnCoaching.com. Reach out to her there. Jeanne, thank you very much for being on the Riderflex show. I appreciate you spending time with us.
Oh, what a pleasure it's been, Steve. Thank you so much.